Congratulations, first of all, to all of those who have invested so much of yourselves in the learning and hard work necessary to attain the degree you will receive tomorrow. A special salute to the 8 of you who are heading to Teach for America this summer, and to President Trout and the administration and faculty here for instilling such an ethos of service on this campus that so many of your seniors apply to join our cause and other efforts to address the disparities and challenges in our society. Your campus has, from my experience and our experience at Teach for America, one of the most powerful ethics of giving back and making our nation a better place, which is quite a gift to the world and to all of those of you who've been lucky enough to be part of this community. It is an honor to have the opportunity to share some thoughts for reflection as you graduates head out into the world. I want to use my time to speak with you about the power of inexperience, the possibility of change, and the importance of finding your passion. First, about inexperience. So, over time, I've become more and more convinced that recent graduates have an asset that makes you uniquely qualified to make a real difference in the world, especially in the face of entrenched challenges that others have given up on. There's something about the fresh perspective and limitless energy of young people that enables you to solve problems that many more experienced people have given up on. Thinking back to my own senior year in college, I wasn't intending to start something like Teach for America, to start anything at all for that matter. As a college senior, I was applying to 2-year corporate training programs, seeking out political internships, and generally struggling in my search for something I really wanted to do. My generation was dubbed the me generation. People thought all we wanted to do was, focus on ourselves and make a lot of money. But that didn't strike me as quite right. I felt as if thousands of us talented, driven people were searching for a way to make a social impact, but simply couldn't find the opportunity to do so. Well, during my senior fall, I helped organize a conference about education reform, where one of the topics was the shortage of qualified teachers in urban and rural communities. It was at that conference that I thought of an idea. Why doesn't our country have a national corps that recruits us as aggressively to teach in our lowest income communities as we were being recruited at the time to work on Wall Street? It was one of those things, the minute I thought of it, I was possessed by this idea. I thought it would make a huge difference in kids' lives and that ultimately it could change the consciousness of our country by influencing the thinking and career paths of a generation of leaders. And I needed a thesis topic, so decided that this idea would be it. I researched for the thesis and looked at the policy context in which it would operate and actually studied the mood on college campuses and looked at other models like the Federal Peace Teacher Corps of the 60s and the Peace Corps and VISTA and such. I just became completely convinced that it had to happen, and so I wrote a very long and passionate letter to the President of the United States, of course, suggesting that he start this as the Peace Corps of the 90s. Well, that letter didn't get very far. I received a job rejection letter back in response. And so in my thesis, I declared that I would try to start such a corps myself as a nonprofit organization. Well, when my thesis advisor looked at my budget, which showed that to recruit and train 500 new teachers into this corps during the first year would cost $2.5 million, he asked me, and he says now that he thought I was deranged, he asked me if I knew how hard it is to raise $2,500, let alone $2.5 million. But aided by my inexperience, I was unfazed by his question. When school district officials and potential funders laughed at the notion that the me generation would jump at the chance to teach in urban and rural communities, and they did laugh. I remember, sitting in the district offices in the LA Unified School System and showing this guy who managed human resources a list of 100 colleges where in the first year I said we were going to recruit, And he leaned back and put his feet on the desk and literally laughed and said, "You won't find kids at these schools who want to teach in our schools." Well, that year, 2,500 graduating seniors competed to enter Teach for America in response to a grassroots recruitment campaign, flyers under doors at that time, since there was no email back then. And 1 year after I graduated, with $2.5 million in hand from the corporate and foundation community, I was looking out on an auditorium full of 489 recent college graduates who had joined Teach for America's first core. My very greatest asset in getting here was simply that I did not understand what was impossible. I would soon learn the value of experience, but Teach for America would not exist today if it were not for my naivete. For individuals like Brooke Malpas, who graduated from Rhodes College 3 years ago. When Brooke started teaching language arts to her 8th graders in Houston, she discovered that they had an average 5th grade reading level. So 8th graders with a 5th grade reading level. Some of her students actually had a 2nd grade skills level. But she naively set out to change that, to move her students forward and help them catch up. She set a goal that by the end of the year, her students would make at least 2 years of progress in a year's time. And she invested her students in that goal and working harder than they'd ever worked before to get there. She built an extensive library to foster their love of reading. Seeking to help change their academic trajectory, she maximized every minute she had in the time that she taught them, and then kept her kids after school, ensured they did lots of homework, and worked with them on Saturdays. At the end of the year, Brooke's students had moved 2 years forward in a year's time. Some of her students moved 4 years in a year's time. Her ambition to change their academic trajectory, which many more experienced people might have thought crazy, had unleashed enormous amounts of energy and produced significant academic gains that have the potential to literally change the lives of her students. The world needs your inexperience. It needs you before you accept the status quo, before you are plagued by the knowledge of what is impossible. My third thought, with which I will leave you, is about the importance of searching until you find your passion, a purpose greater than yourself, in pursuit of which you will be brave enough to ask your naive questions, to pick yourselves up from failures and persevere until you succeed. I feel just incredibly fortunate personally to have found my passion so early in my search. For me, it was a deep belief in this cause, in a cause so much greater than myself, that enabled me to take the sometimes terrifying leaps outside of my comfort zone during the years after I graduated, and that then, even as things got much tougher over time, have left me feeling no option but to keep at it. Which is important, because as important as inexperience is, it turns out that experience is also invaluable, that sticking with challenges and embracing steep learning curves over time generates very important insights. When I asked Brooke why she stepped out into the unknown and challenged expectations about what students in her community could accomplish, and really, as she herself says, pushed her kids harder than she might naturally have felt that it was, quote, nice to do, she said, "I just cared so much about my kids that I just had to." It is exhausting to have true passions, but it's hard to imagine anything more fulfilling. So my very deepest hope for you is that you find your way to a pursuit that is so important to you that you will approach it with the perfectionist zeal necessary to effect meaningful change and to gain the deep sense of satisfaction that comes along with that. Good luck.